I've got a web call from Amir in the UK. Amir, you there?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can back off your phone just a little bit so it doesn't distort. What's on your mind?
Okay, is that any better?
Yes.
Much.
Cool. So I wanted to present an argument as to why I think God is the best explanation as to why anything at all exists. And in the first instance, I just wanted to clarify that I'm not arguing for a specific religious God, but rather a more generic kind of creator figure. And even though I feel that God is the best explanation, and even though there is some evidence for the existence of God, I'm going to concede, and I would say that the evidence is not compelling. However, from what we can derive, I still think it remains the best option. And first of all, I just wanted to ask you both a question. Are there any other options except for God that can explain why something at all exists? And if so, what makes them more compelling than the God hypothesis?
So, a couple of things. You're not here to interview us about what we believe. You're here to tell us what you believe and why. Also, I just wanted to go back to what you just said was the evidence isn't compelling, but it's the best explanation we have. Do you think police cases should be tried that way? The evidence isn't that compelling, but we don't have another suspect, so let's just go for it.
No, absolutely not.
So when the evidence isn't compelling, what do you do?
Well, when the evidence isn't compelling, you're not going to be able to make a judgment, but you can still speculate. Say, for example,
So
the
to
case
be
with Madeleine McCann, no one could prove that the parents were guilty, but most people are of the opinion and can speculate, rightfully so, that the parents had some sort of involvement with the situation. And you see, with this
you think
conversation here, with this dialogue, I'm not trying to prove that God exists. I'm just trying to say that God is the best explanation as to why anything at all exists. And in fact, such a
why is
statement
it
can be completely
why is
gone.
it better than we don't know?
It's not a comparison that you can make. It's not like you have options and we don't know. I'm happy to concede and say we don't know, but I'm just appending it with we don't know. However, from what we do know, God appears to be the best explanation.
All right. I'm done with my questions, Seth. You can go ahead now.
What would the nature of this God be? I mean, if you believe that there was a God, even a deistic watchmaker, first cause kind of God, that God in your mind must have certain attributes, what would they be and why?
I don't necessarily feel it's important to discuss these attributes of God in order for us to say that God is the best explanation as to why anything exists. We're going to end up going on a tangent at that
No,
point.
no, no, it's not a
Um,
tangent. Look, if you're going to say that there was an agent with a capital A who purposefully set things in motion, then I think you could probably infer certain things about the nature of that agent based on the creation that he, she, or it made, right? I mean, do you have any intuitions about that?
Intuitions, sure, we could say so, but again, I don't think we need an explanation of something if it appears to be the best explanation that there is. Otherwise, we'll end up in some sort of infinite regress and we won't make any progress from it. Let's just say, hypothetically, if we're all taking a stroll on a very distant planet and we come across some very sophisticated artifacts, and between us, we could all conclude that the best explanation for these artifacts happen to be extraterrestrials. Now, we don't need to know where these extraterrestrials have come from or what their motives were in order to conclude that the extraterrestrials are the best explanation for the artifacts. And it's the same thing here with God. We don't need to question the attributes of God or what God's motives were in order to say that God is the best explanation as to why anything at all exists.
No, I'm not done here, Paul. Hang on just a second. Because I don't want to walk on you, brother. I didn't know if you had
No,
something
no,
because I want to
no,
probably
you're
have you
good. Keep going.
to come in. Okay, all right. Well, I disagree with your premise. I mean, you can say God's the best explanation. You've made a declaration, but you've given us no real reason to accept that it was a God. We'll call it a deity. whether it's and to not even say that deity has certain characteristics or a proper name. We're not going to go that far. It has no attributes. We can't make any declarations or inferences about who or what or it is. It just happens to be a god. I just disagree with your premise. And Paul's correct. The intellectually honest thing is to say we don't know. I don't know. Paul doesn't know. You don't know. And even if it was some sort of a God thing out there, if I can borrow from Gene Roddenberry, how would that affect your life enough that you would want to call a show and talk about it? I mean, that God obviously is not a personal God, not involved in the everyday affairs of us, sits back and watch monumental failures of the plan that that God supposedly put in place and does nothing about it. What would motivate you to call and defend a deity that isn't defending you?
Again, I think we're digressing slightly.
No,
First
I'm
and
asking
foremost,
a
we're
specific
all in
question.
agreement.
What
We're
motivates you to talk about the God with no name, who has no attributes, who must, if or is most likely the genesis point for all of creation, all of the universe? What motivates that in you?
I'm sorry, can you just clarify? Are you asking me what motivated me to call the line today?
Are you a frequent caller to the show? I mean, I'm a relatively new host, so help me out.
No.
Okay. So you feel strongly enough about talking about this nebulous, faceless, who knows what it is, God, and you're using the word God, to call and say that you believe it is the most likely explanation. But that God, even if it existed, some sort of a thing that just spun the cosmos into existence, including the chaos that we see all around us and the cruelty that's happening 24/7, and all of the system failures, which are built in, baked in to the universe that we live in, certainly the world that we live on, why would you care enough to make your case when that God is not caring enough to involve himself, itself, whatever in your life?
I care about these conversations because they're important, and I don't think we should dismiss God outright. I mean, at the end of the day, you're inviting Fierce onto the show to be able to at least have some sort of dialogue as to why certain people believe that God is the best explanation as to why anything at all exists. And I'm calling, therefore, to try to have this honest dialogue with you guys and hash it out a little bit.
That's fair.
Um,
No, that's fair. But I'm interested that it matters because essentially the answer that we all land on is we don't know. And you've admitted as much, Amir. You don't
Absolutely, we're in
know.
agreement. We are in
We
agreement.
don't know.
However, we can speculate. That is the thing. We can speculate. And this is where atheists, I don't think, make that leap of faith. They're just so set in their ways to say that we don't know. That's fine, but we can speculate nonetheless. And if you can agree that we can speculate, then we can make some sort of progress from here. Do you agree?
Wait, are you
That it's
saying
fine
that
that we
that
can
people that
speculate?
atheists don't speculate? We have conversations all the time about what an origin point may have looked like and when did time begin, if ever. Is it a timeless universe? Space-time conversations that astrophysicists have on a daily basis, the multiverse theories that are being bounded about often by atheists. So this idea that you're telling atheists that we're incurious, we don't care, we're not interested, we've simply closed our minds, I think is an unfair characterization of who we are. We're just saying intellectual honesty demands we say we don't know, which is the same thing you've said as well.
Sure. I didn't make that claim at all. I'm just saying that to say that I don't
No,
know
you said
is
we were rigid. You said we were rigid and we weren't, atheists were not speculating. And I disagree. I think we speculate, but we still don't know.
okay, sure. Okay, that's fine. And so if we go from there and if we agree that we can speculate, then we need to therefore ask the question, out of the options that exist, which option has the most intellectual persuasion? Is it God? Is it the multiverse? Is it some other naturalistic model? And then make some progress from there. And in my opinion, I think that God is the best explanation. And bear in mind, with the claim that I say that God is the best explanation as to why anything at all exists, that's actually a claim that an atheist can also make. Even though I do believe in God, the claim that God is the best explanation as to why anything at all exists can still be a claim that an atheist can make. They may not be persuaded that God exists, but they can still concede that God is the best explanation as to why anything at all exists. Do you both agree on that?
I just
I've
disagree with
never
that.
come
I
across
just
it.
don't. I don't think God is the best explanation. I disagree with the premise of the claim that's being made. I don't know, Paul. Did you want to? I've been monopolizing. You have anything you want to
It's
add?
all right. So Amir,
I
you
apologize. That's my job in the background.
no, that's right. No worries. My puppy's here
I
too,
do
so we're
believe
all
in
we're
dog,
all good.
so I believe in dog.
um, so Amir, you're talking about a brute. God is a brute fact, right? Because you referenced you don't want infinite regress. So God is a
Correct.
brute fact in your system. And
Correct.
you would agree that all systems, philosophically, all systems just have a brute fact,
Correct.
and that
I
brute
believe that
facts
there is
are things.
one. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, I do agree that there's one aspect of reality that we would have to say is a brute fact, like a necessary foundation, so to speak.
Right. So, and the definition of a brute fact is that something that has no further explanation, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, you're positing God as a brute fact. Let's say hypothetically that I posit that matter and energy, probably energy, but they're interchangeable, is also a brute fact. Let's just say I'm positing energy is a brute fact. You're positing God as a brute fact.
Yeah.
Would you not? And you're familiar with Occam's razor, I presume,
Correct.
that you don't want to multiply entities beyond necessity.
Yep.
So we in both of our systems, there's a brute fact. In both of our system, energy exists. So so you are positing further entities further than my brute fact explanation, are you not?
Sure. But the reason why I have to posit let's call it a further entity, is because where you draw the line isn't sufficient. In order for time and matter to exist, it needs to exist within time. And so
No, it
if
doesn't.
we,
No, 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 Amir.
of course it
Many,
does.
many, 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 many cosmologists, Christian ones, will tell you that space-time started at the Big Bang, but before that, if as Seth already indicated, that before might not even be a coherent question because time isn't part of what I'm positing as my brute fact.
So what are you positing exactly? That at the most fundamental level of reality, there was just matter and energy and no time.
Correct. And I am joined in that by the preeminent cosmologists of our time.
So if there was matter and energy devoid of time, then how do we explain the existence of time? How could time
Time is
come in?
time is the
How
fourth
could,
dimension of space-time. Time isn't a thing. Time is just like height and depth and width aren't a thing. Time is merely our fourth dimension.
right. So you're saying that the underlying foundation of naturalism, that the natural world came into existence by a mechanism which itself is naturalistic. Am I right in thinking that?
So I think you are confusing our universe with all that exists. What would be the cosmos? People agree that our instantiation of space time had a start point, but we cannot. We have no tools to get further back than that. So I don't want to go into a large debate about this, but all I wanted to say was you are pausing a question in a way that I don't think you understand. You asked what the alternatives were, and I gave you just a taste of one, and it seems like it's new to you, and that is somewhat concerning. So if this is a question that is important to you and eats at you, I would just recommend that you look into Sean Carroll or look into any number of cosmologists out there,
Yeah, I
so
mean,
that you,
yeah,
if you're laying things out on the table to choose between them, and Seth and I are arguing you don't need to choose because we don't have insufficient information, so don't choose. But if
well,
you
I'm
feel
actually
like you
very
have to,
familiar with Sean Carroll's. I'm so sorry for the interjection, because I'd rather hash out this point in particular and see if we can make progress on this. Look, my understanding is that Sean Carroll is an advocate of the many worlds hypothesis. Correct.
Correct.
And that okay. And so he's an advocate of the many worlds hypothesis. Now, in Sean Carroll's world of the many worlds hypothesis, it would imply that we are having this conversation an infinite number of times in an infinite number of, call it, parallel universes with an infinite number of variations. So in one particular realm of existence, we are having this conversation right now where we're all butt naked with, theatrical lights in the background and everything else, and you're wearing a
Yes.
wig,
Carry
etc.
on.
And we're saying that that is more probable just because
No,
Sean
I don't.
Carroll and other
I don't
physicists
buy.
have.
I don't necessarily. I don't buy multiverse at all. Personally, don't buy it. Don't think it. Don't think that's how things happen. But Sean Carroll would agree that before our instantiation of space time, matter and energy existed, and that would have to be the case for his theory to work, and that is in. They call it eternal. It's not timeless. It's not like forever, but they call it eternal.
Eternal equation.
So in that way, it's compatible, right? And so all I'm saying is, and we all have that again. The Occam's razor. We don't have to multiply and say we have that there's a God that has to step in. So as neither Seth or I are cosmologists, I think we have probably soon reached the end of our rudimentary understanding of what we could represent. I just wanted to put on the table for you that I think Occam's razor makes all the naturalistic hypotheses more probable than your God one, because that's a huge entity to just insert. So, Seth, did you have anything to wrap up this
No,
with?
I'm interested. Amir, do you see that it's most likely a god just sort of kicked things off and then pissed off? Or do you see design? Do you see evidence for a god in the fine tuning? Do you go that far?
I'm not a fine tuning advocate as such. I think things like that can possibly be explained in some grander sort of science and evolution. I'm questioning it more from, call it, the contingency argument
Okay.
and the question of why
Well, I mean,
anything
we
at all exists.
it's it's interesting. We can speculate, and atheists will join you in speculating. I think we're hungry for answers, but right now we're just guessing because we don't know, and I think we all fall down on that side of the coin. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'm still trying to fathom any scientific model that explains how the universe would have come into existence with just prior matter and energy in the absence of time, because things cannot come into existence in any capacity. And I'm trying to be very careful about the wording, which is why I'm
You're
slightly
still you're
pausing.
still not.
We're
You're
going down the bunny hole again, man. It's been 20
yeah,
minutes. I think we've covered it, but it's
yeah.
something we will continue to chew on in the comments section. But at the end of the day, I don't know remains the answer. That isn't the answer. Okay.
Yeah. So
All right.
it
Thanks for
just in all
calling.
of this, just like so I can clarify it as well.
All right. I'm going to move on. Sorry, Amir. Um,
No, no.
I don't mean to be rude, but I said goodbye twice, and I just feel
Mhm.
like I feel like we were on the hamster wheel. Did you get that vibe?
I
I don't
absolutely
know,
did,
you
and
don't know. So,
he also he I felt like the whole idea that he's convinced that what people think is that something came from nothing, and which is something I had to learn that isn't really what cosmologists posit at all, until you get over that hurdle. And I don't think he was there yet. He needs to just get over the hurdle that that's not what he's arguing against. So
well, and one of the
anyway,
reasons I ask about fine tuning and intelligent design, granted, this has been on my mind recently as I narrated a book about it from Dr. Abby Hafer. But, I have all these people who were like, look at the trees, people. I think
mm,
Eve was framed was on my show last week, and she was like, one of the arguments that drove her the most crazy, and this isn't the argument Amir was making, but it popped into my mind was, look at how amazingly fine-tuned it. Look at how intricate and complex. If we were this much closer to the sun, we'd bake. And if we were this much further away, we would freeze. Obviously, we were hand placed here. And I'm always like, well, our sun gives off dangerous UV rays that gives us cancer. So our main source of light kills us, or at least harms us. And explain the design, which includes genetic defects and mass extinction events and child cancer and macular degeneration and blind creatures that have eyes, deaf creatures with ears, and volcanoes that kill 10,000 people, a tsunami that kills 250,000 human beings in one day. Don't tell me the planet is fine-tuned for us. Don't tell me this universe was made for us in mind. And so I always get a little bit of a whiff of divine destiny, not with Amir, but almost always. Then when someone talks about, it came from someone somewhere, I always feel like we're supposedly an end result that was always in mind.
Hmm.
And so that's why I asked the question. The fine tuning argument, I honestly, at first blush, it just falls apart. We are obviously not, the end goal of a grand designer. And if we were the designer, I want to talk to the manager because I have many complaints. Are you good to take another call, Paul? How you doing for
Let's
time?
go. I'm good.